there's a new class of drugs that could be a game changer.
These GLP-1 drugs,
Ozempic and Wegovy,
the injectable diabetes drug.
These are not safe drugs.
Nausea, stomach pain, and thyroid cancer.
Are there any situations where Ozempic should be used for weight loss?
Even if these drugs turn out to do horrible things to people, it still might be beneficial to take them.
I'm the heaviest I've ever been in my life.
Obesity so dramatically decreases one's lifespan.
Yes, we have drugs that can slow down the rate, but not actually make our patients better.
These are the side effects, these are the benefits. Make up your own mind.
Hi, this is Sarah from Plant-Based News, and I'm here today with a very special guest. Dr. Michael Greger is a physician, author, and speaker who's well known in the vegan community and beyond for his work and his research specifically around advocating for a whole foods plant-based diet. He is a New York Times bestseller with not one, but 4 books and 2 cookbooks. But we're here to actually discuss Dr. Greger's latest book, which is titled Ozempic: Risks, Benefits, and Natural Alternatives to GLP Weight Loss Drugs. So hello, Dr. Greger, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for speaking to us today. I want to start by just rolling back a little bit and just getting you to explain to someone like me who has no medical knowledge, no kind of medical training, anything like that, what is Ozempic and why is it such a hot topic at the moment?
Oh, what a fantastic question. Ozempic is one of a new class of weight loss drugs. They are so-called GLP-1 agonists. GLP-1 is a natural, normal appetite-suppressing hormone in our body, but the pharmaceutical industry found a way to package a drug in a way that leads to elevated levels of this natural appetite-suppressing hormone in our body such that it suppresses our appetite. And what happens when we don't eat as much? We lose weight. And the reason why there's so much hubbub about these drugs is that these drugs, in general, cause 3 times as much weight loss as all other previous classes of weight loss drugs, which we've had around for a half century. And so previous weight loss drugs be very rare to see more than 5% average weight loss, whereas these drugs, you can see like a 15% average weight loss. And so we have lots of examples in the past of drugs that were purported to be weight loss wonder drugs, only later to be pulled from the market as public health threats years later when we realized their downsides. And most drugs have been pulled from the market for causing too many side effects. But in that case, I mean, they didn't even offer much benefit. So even if these drugs turn out to do horrible things to people, it still might be beneficial to take them just because obesity so dramatically decreases one's lifespan, reducing life expectancy as much as 6 or 7 years, that like bariatric surgery, these drugs should be considered as last resort for those unwilling or unable to treat the cause of their obesity, which is a fattening diet.
Okay, I hear you. But on that, why particularly did you want to put pen to paper on this topic?
Well, I mean, it's really out of embarrassment that it's been years. So in 2021, Ozempic was approved for weight loss and has taken the weight loss industry by storm. Really changed how obesity is looked at in the medical community, just has reverberations. Yet you go to Nutrition Facts and there isn't a single video on Ozempic or Ozempic type drugs. And so it was, but the problem is the longer I waited, the more and more thousands of articles were published on these landmark new drugs. And so it just became more and more intimidating to take it on as a research topic. But finally, it reached a point where it's like, all right. It was actually a Wall Street Journal called me up for an interview on the topic. And I was like, this is a great. So I agreed to the interview and I knew it would force me to do the deep dive I needed to. And so ended up doing, I think, scripting like 20 videos on Ozempic. Which is just like hours of material. And I was like, well, look, I did all this research. So, I want to repackage, this information in as many forms as possible. So we just did a big webinar on it, which lasted for 3 hours. Let's put it out as an audiobook, as an ebook, as a paperback. Get this information to many hands as possible, because people are really curious. Are these drugs right for me? What are the pros and cons? What are the natural alternatives? It's your body, your choice, and only you can make up that decision. But you need to make that decision fully informed. And there wasn't a good resource out there that just laid it out. All right, here's the downsides. These are the side effects. This is the rate of the side effects. These are the benefits. These are the rate of the benefits. Make up your own mind.
For sure. Okay, and what are your actual personal thoughts on it? If you had to just give us like a little sort of summary of Dr. Greger's personal thoughts, tweet length, what would you say?
Well, the problem is people eat too much crap. And so anything that gets people to eat less crap can be beneficial, whether it's rearranging your digestive organs in bariatric surgery, or injecting yourself with a drug every week. But you don't need an expensive drug to decrap your diet.
No, for sure. What are the kind of dangers of using it? You kind of alluded to it before. Like, are there side effects? Is there permanent damage possible with taking something like this?
So there's a range of common side effects, mostly gastrointestinal, like nausea, vomiting, constipation. There are some more serious, rare side effects, such as pancreatitis, gastroparesis, so slowing down of the digestive tract, such that can lead to bowel obstruction, which is a surgical emergency. Thyroid cancer is a rare side effect. But if you're worried about cancer, you need to be worried about having excess body fat, as obesity is associated with a wide range of cancers. One would expect with a sufficient weight loss that no matter how much cancer these drugs would cause, you would decrease your risk of cancer overall. For example, those undergoing bariatric surgery cut their cancer rates in half because, again, the inflammatory mediators spilled out by excess body fat can facilitate the growth of a variety of different cancers. There's some concern about pancreatic cancer, which would be more serious. That's one of the cancers you really don't want to get. But again, the most exciting thing about these drugs is the decrease in cardiovascular disease risk for those with pre-existing heart disease. So if you've had a heart attack or a stroke, taking these drugs for a few years, you'd be expected to lose enough weight that would actually decrease your risk of a subsequent cardiac event by 2 or 3%, which is similar to what you see with kind of statin drugs, cholesterol-lowering statin drugs, which on an individual basis may not seem like a lot, but on a population scale could save thousands of lives. The risk versus benefits, because obesity, as I said, is so devastating to one's health, you'd almost accept any kind of downsides for these kind of drugs. But that's assuming that one actually can cure obesity with these drugs. And that's not what the research shows. So the research shows that in all the major trials that have been done, people started out obese and ended up obese before the weight loss plateaus. After about a year on these drugs, no matter how many subsequent years you continue to inject yourself, you don't lose a single more pound. After about a year, weight loss plateaus, but not plateaus because you're at a normal weight, but it plateaus because it no longer stops. It basically stops working. Your body fights back in terms of ramping up your appetite such that you're only eating about 400 calories less. And because you're so much lighter, because you took the drug for a year, it costs about 400 calories less to exist. And so with calories in equals calories out, your weight loss stalls. And so then you're injecting yourself with these drugs every single week for the rest of your life just to maintain that initial weight loss. And so you are less obese than you were before, but you're still obese and you're not going to budge from that taking these drugs. And of course, you stop taking these drugs, all the original weight will come back, and then you'll just go from less obese back to more obese. So it really doesn't treat the underlying cause, which is why it's so important to the diet and lifestyle component is so important. If, however, you absolutely refuse to eat healthier, then these drugs can, in certain cases, be life-saving.
Okay, so from your opinion, do you think you could get the same results in that Ozempic gives people from having a whole foods plant-based diet, except that potentially you could sustain it? Because you're saying that like it works for a bit, right? And people think that it's worked, and then all of a sudden it plateaus and it stops. Let's say you just went for like whole foods plant-based diet, switched out all the crappy foods as we were calling them, stuck to that. Do you feel like you could get the same, if not better, results doing that?
The greatest weight loss benefit ever recorded in the peer-reviewed medical literature, the gold standard of evidence, in a randomized controlled trial that didn't restrict portions or enforce exercise, was a whole food plant-based diet. During the height of weight loss on these drugs, after a few months of ramping up to the recommended dose, you're eating as many as 1,000 calories fewer a day. No wonder you see this kind of rapid weight loss in the beginning. You say, how could you possibly eat 1,000 calories less and not be starving all the time unless you're on some kind of, like liquid meal replacement diet or something? Oh, how do you do it? You go on a diet centered around whole plant foods, foods that are calorically dilute. So like the, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and by avoiding the foods that are calorically dense, such as the meats, cheeses, sugars, and fats, etc. And when you do that, this famous body of work done at the University of Pennsylvania by Barbara Rolls showed you put people on these healthy foods, have them eat as much as they want. Guess what? They eat 1,000 calories less than they otherwise might. And they lose weight because of it, and they are full because you can stuff yourself silly with certain foods, and there's just simply aren't enough calories to even maintain your weight, and you lose weight whether you like it or not.
Okay, it makes a lot of sense, to be fair. There's been a story circulating recently about an influencer who lost 250 pounds in 2 years. Do you think that this could have been done with lifestyle changes only, or do you suspect something like Ozempic could have been involved? There's a lot of speculation about what actually occurred, but so 250 pounds across 2 years, do you reckon that's a weight loss drug situation, or it could be lifestyle?
Absolutely could be less. Look, you lock someone in a closet, they will lose about 1 pound a day for as many years as you want until they go negative, until they float off the planet and die. Seriously. So there are people that go on literally water only fasting with a multivitamin so they don't, die of scurvy or something. And they can lose literally hundreds of pounds a year until they get down to normal weight. And this happens to everybody. There's no exception to the rules of physics. There's certain laws of thermodynamics. And for people to be like, oh, it doesn't matter how many few calories I eat, I don't lose any weight. That's because when you look at the scale, that's not telling you body weight. That's not telling you body fat. That's telling you body weight. And so, you can go on an extremely low calorie diet and for 5 days see absolutely no movement on the scale and think that you are some biological freak. And be like, it doesn't matter, diets don't work, I need to take drugs, or I need to do surgery, I need to do something. Whereas every single day you were losing body fat, you absolutely have to lose body fat. Everybody loses body fat because this is where your body is keeping your brain alive. If you're breathing, you're using energy. Where's that energy coming from? It's coming from your energy scores. But because you were retaining water, for example, you actually don't change anything on the scale, but you stay on that low calorie diet long enough, and all of a sudden, bam, you'll have this. All of a sudden, your weight will drop down to exactly how we would predict it would drop down, losing body fat every single day. It's just that there may be delay showing up on the scale, but you can do all these fancy methods of actually measuring what's happening in your body, like MRIs, and you can show you lose body fat, particularly that dangerous visceral fat, infiltrating your abdominal organs, as soon as your calories out outweighs your calories in. And most of those calories out are just baseline metabolism, so you're just basically, losing weight as you sleep. And those eating plant-based diets tend to have a higher resting metabolic rate by 10 or 20%. So that's one of the reasons why eating plant-based is so effective in causing weight loss.
Are there any situations, in your opinion, where Ozempic should be used for weight loss? I know that's not really what it was designed for originally. Somebody mentioned it was something to do with diabetes. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the nice thing about these drugs. That they've been used for a few decades as diabetes drugs. And so we have a sense of their safety, at least at those lower doses. So they're actually now used. So now there's new drugs like tirzepatide, which didn't exist before. But the Ozempic, semaglutide, was actually used as a lower dose as a diabetes drug. It's now used as a higher dose, and so we don't have long-term safety data for that. But we do that. This drug has been around. Are there cases in which people should take these drugs? The exact same cases in which people should go under the knife, even though bariatric surgery kills about 1 in 1,200 people that go on the table. It is not a benign procedure. These are risky major surgeries. It's still people that undergo bariatric surgery live significantly longer than those who don't at the same weight. Why? Because obesity is so absolutely devastating. You could accept almost any risk to decrease body weight. But so again, if you are unwilling or unable to treat the underlying cause of obesity, then these extreme things like injecting yourself with these drugs, regardless of the risk, undergoing bariatric surgery, regardless of the risk, would be expected in certain cases to actually be improve your health and longevity.
Okay. But you don't see it as being something that people who, I don't know, want to lose a few pounds or, it seems like maybe it's going to almost become like a trendy dieting thing where people are like, oh, I don't need to bother doing that stuff. I'll just grab some.
Yeah, no. So then the risk benefit ratio completely changes, right? So these are not safe drugs. They have a long list of side effects. In fact, most people stop taking these drugs within months before they even ramp up to the recommended dose. So about half stopping this drug within 2 months, 80% stopped taking it within 6 months. And these are people who had the drugs paid for, so it wasn't like they couldn't afford it, but it's because of the side effects. But the reason why the benefits still may outweigh the risk is not because these drugs are so good, but because obesity is so bad. However, if you take somebody who's not obese, but just wants to lose weight for an acting part or for bikini season or whatever, then all of a sudden, so then we have the risks, but the benefits, I mean, losing a few pounds is not going to have, any metabolic benefits for someone who's, just kind of mildly overweight. It may not, depending on how heavy they are and whether they have prediabetes or something. And so then one would expect the risk to far outweigh the benefits. That's why they aren't indicated for people who aren't obese or who have these, these comorbidities where we would expect that it's like saying, I need to lose a few pounds. I'm going to undergo bariatric surgery. I'm going to go under the knife, general anesthesia, get my organs rearranged, my stomach stapled to lose a few pounds. Will it work? Absolutely. But it's like, oh my God, that's super risky. And what's the benefit? Well, I'll be lighter for bikini season. You'll have a big scar down the center of your body, but you will be skinny. It's true. But so, the risk benefit only works out because obesity is so devastating. If you're not obese, you should not be taking these drugs.
Yeah, I just feel like when it's a surgery, the risk seems much more obvious, right? When it's a medication or you just take something, I don't think people see the severity of it. I think people are just like, oh, I'll just take this thing. And then I guess society's kind of beauty standards and all of that are so strong that people just are willing to take risk for something that could severely damage their health.
The nice thing about the drugs is you can stop the drugs.
True.
So unfortunately, most of the bariatric surgeries that are done are irreversible. Complication rates are pretty high. Whereas if you experience a significant problem, if you get pancreatitis on these drugs or something, well, look, you just stop taking the drugs.
True.
That's one kind of the benefits of drugs over surgery, even though the end result may be similar.
Yeah. And as far as you're aware, I mean, I guess the research is limited at the moment, but as far as you're aware, there aren't, like you said, that say you get side effects, you stop taking it, that all goes away. Are there any kind of permanent things that could mess up your body completely if you take it?
Oh, well, I mean, look, you could die. That's pretty irreversible. No. There are certain serious side effects that, could be potentially life-threatening. But yeah, in general, the most common side effects should just kind of go away on your own. One of the side effects we didn't talk about, which I'm glad to see is getting a little more press recently, is the muscle loss. So typically when you lose weight by any means, surgery, a diet, about 25% of the weight you lose is not actually fat, but is lean mass, like your skeletal muscles. And so when you lose 4 pounds or 4 kilos on the scale, one of those kilos is actually not fat. But with these drugs, the amount of lean mass loss is much greater, about 40%. About 40% of the weight you lose is in lean mass. Now, the drug industry would argue, hey, you're still losing mostly, 60% is the fat. And so in general, you're actually, your ratio is getting better, which is true. But the concern is if there's weight cycling. So if people go on these drugs, they lose weight, they lose a lot of muscle mass, and then for whatever reason, they go off the drug. Either there's a shortage of the drug, they can't afford it anymore, it gets withdrawn for whatever, the side effects, whatever. The concern is that, okay, the weight will come back, the body fat will come back up, but your muscles may not. And so then you start out lower and then you go on these drugs again, you lose even more muscle mass and may end up contributing to frailty, loss of excess muscle mass in the end. So that's something that we haven't seen before in weight loss trials. Is 40% lean body mass is a lot. So what's critically important for anyone going on these drugs to immediately enact a rigorous strength training, resistance training, exercise program to maintain as much muscle mass as possible during the weight loss phase.
But I'm thinking, how likely is that even going to be if this is the kind of person who has been unable to do that stuff in the first place to make their lifestyle better? Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's
it's going to be difficult, right?
It's true. That's a concern.
Yeah. I did actually see there was a study coming out of the University of Alberta, and they noticed that they were testing on mice, and they saw that their hearts were actually shrinking. So not just the muscle mass, but the muscle of the heart, which sounds kind of concerning if that is to become something that's talked about more or seen more in studies.
Although, again, for people with pre-existing heart disease, one would expect actually a decreased risk of heart attacks, at least within a few-year period.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
But yeah, for long-term, we just don't know what the risks are because these are new dosing schedules or new drugs.
What would you say to somebody who was considering taking these drugs? I'm not even necessarily saying it's their last option. Just people are seeing it out and about. They're seeing it in the news. They're seeing it in the press. It seems like a silver bullet type thing. What would you, as a physician, actually say to someone who's considering it?
So I would encourage them to use, to first treat the underlying cause. And that is by trying to clean up their diets. And that has all sorts of side benefits as well. So not only the weight loss, but improvement in inflammation, lowering not just heart disease risk, but many different types of cancer, many of our leading causes of death, decreasing diabetes risk, etc. So it just kind of, the side effects are all good when one does it the way nature intended. The reason we have these appetite suppressing hormones naturally in our body is so that we don't overeat. But unfortunately, because of changes in our modern food supply, we are kind of short-circuiting our natural satiety circuits in our body, and we don't actually get the natural GLP-1 boost that we would normally get eating whole plant foods, because now we're eating mostly processed foods or animal foods, which are all absorbed higher up in the small intestine, don't make it down to the end of the small intestine, the colon, where these GLP-1 receptor cells are. And so we can get kind of similar appetite suppressing benefits eating healthy foods like dark green leafy vegetables, which slow the digestion of fat through the digestive system, so we actually get that GLP-1 activation, eating groats, these intact whole grain kernels, eating high fiber rich foods in general. Certain spices can increase GLP-1, turmeric, cinnamon, and cayenne pepper, all of which shown to result in weight loss. Vinegar is metabolized into acetate in the body and has the similar effects as eating a high fiber diet in terms of appetite suppression, which is one of the reasons I think vinegar has been used to treat obesity for centuries. There are natural ways to boost GLP-1 without suffering the side effects associated with these drugs. And so, I encourage them to eat healthy, number one. And then if for whatever reason they can't, and they and would otherwise be obese for the rest of their lives, they need to do something to decrease their risk, because otherwise they are cutting their life short.
Yes, great. So basically what you're saying is Whole Foods plant-based forever. Last thing is just, where can people get their hands on the new book?
They can go to nutritionfacts.org and click on books, and that's where you can get the audiobook, ebook. You can go on Amazon to get the actual paperback for those who still read books in physical form.